I'm Judy Shaw for NYSE Floor Talk. Joining me today is Lauren Hahn. She is Managing Director, Equity Capital Markets at KKR. Lauren, wonderful to have you on Floor Talk. Thanks for joining me today.
Of course, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Judy.
All right, so Lauren, tell me, what does KKR Capital Markets team do, and how do you work with pre-IPO companies?
That's an excellent question and very fundamental to our business. So when you think about the capital markets business at KKR, and specifically where I sit in the equity capital markets business, it's all about partnering with companies, whether our own portfolio companies or those even outside of the portfolio, to think holistically about equity solutions for their business. And so that can take any number of forms depending on the company and what their objectives are. But simply put, it's helping people strategize, implement, and execute on whatever their equity needs, goals, aspirations are. And so traditionally, that has been very focused on the IPO product and subsequent monetizations, sell downs, capital raising in the public markets once actually listed. But we evolve with our clients, and so that is transitioned into more private capital raising on the equity side over time as well.
All right, so now Lauren, what should pre-IPO companies be doing now to prepare for IPOs in the future?
Well, the one thing that I tell the companies that I work with in today's environment is control what you can control, which very fundamentally is, execute, execute, execute. The capital markets are such that windows open and windows close, but you can always control what is in front of you in your business. And so that's number one. Now, as it relates to planning for a capital raise at some point in time, I do think that there are very interesting things that you can be doing in times when the markets aren't fully functioning from an issuance perspective. One of the things that I always speak to my companies about is making sure that they're thinking about the long lead time items far in advance of when those things actually need to be implemented. Because the reality of the situation is you don't just flip a switch and you're ready overnight, right? So we talk a lot about what is building the bench below the CEO and the CFO look like, and how do you put that right team in place so that you're going to have a strong support when you ultimately do decide to go through a process and then obviously transition into life as a public company. I also think there are very interesting things that you can do around benchmarking your business. One of the most important things about being public is having a really strong grasp on the predictability of your business. And so starting that in the private context in terms of how you benchmark yourself on a quarterly basis, on an annual basis, things that you would think about giving to research analysts and things that you would think about giving to investors. Having all of those things in the back of your mind earlier rather than later can really pay dividends once you actually come to an event.
Mm-hmm. That's very good advice for pre-IPO companies, for sure.
I can go on and on, but those are usually the ones that are top of the list.
So now tell me, what's keeping your team busy today, and what's your outlook for the next 6 months?
Yep. Both very good questions. What is keeping me busy today? Very different than what was keeping me busy last year, to say the least, probably unsurprising to you and everyone that's on the floor of the exchange right now. We are spending a lot of time with our clients thinking about what longer term capital needs look like. So, they're well capitalized for, the next year, the next 2 years, but aside from that, the markets will open up at some point in time. And so how do we be ready to actually, strike when the iron is hot? To use a cliche phrase probably, but to prepare in advance for things that could come down the line when the opportunity presents itself. And so there have been a lot of strategic planning exercises that have occurred over the last 6 months in terms of what those things actually look like. In terms of the next 6 months, what my outlook is.
Yes.
That is a great question. Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did, but I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I think we are going to see a lot of evolution on the private capital raising front in terms of different types of structures, in terms of different combinations of products, and an evolution of the investor base too that's willing to participate in those types of products as well. I think it's going to be a very different market from the fundamental perspective than we saw from a private capital raise even over the past 10 years. There's just been so much evolution and obviously so much dislocation that's moved the market to where we are now that people are thinking about things differently. And having different conversations about what that looks like. I do personally I think it's longer out than 6 months at this point, but I'm of the view that we are going to have a functioning issuance market from a public issuance market perspective in the back half of the year. But there are a lot of things that need to play out between now and then, right? There are a lot of questions still on the data and the macro front, and obviously we're living in a very data-driven market right now. I think companies are still trying to understand what 23 and 24 look like, and obviously, as I touched on before, predictability and an ability to actually articulate that to the public markets is critical when you go through an IPO process. And so when you think about the passage of time and some of these macro factors that will hopefully play out over the next 6 months, I do see us in a situation where we have a market in the second half of next year. Now, albeit a very different market than we saw in 2020 and 2021, but I do think that there will be opportunities for very strong companies to raise equity in the capital markets.
Okay, all right. Well, Lauren, it's been wonderful to talk with you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for sharing your insight.
Of course, thank you.
Okay.